Welcome to this ACCA podcast. My name is Isabel and I'm part of the team at ACCA that delivers student support. And today I'm really pleased to be joined by expert tutor Jo Tuffle. Now, there are some important updates for SBR students, especially if you're planning to sit the SBR exam from September 25 onwards. The syllabus is changing with the introduction of IFRS 18 and IFRS 19. Now, IFRS 18 is replacing IAS 1 and updates IAS 8, bringing changes to how financial statements are presented with the aim of improving consistency and comparability across financial reporting. But what we're going to do today is break down what those changes mean for SBR students and how you can make sense of those syllabus updates. So we'll get right into it, and welcome, Jo. Thank you so much for joining me today to talk about this.
Thank you so much, Isabel, for having me. I'm really delighted to be here.
It'll be great. I think this will be a really useful overview. But before we dive into the technical detail, maybe you can just give us a little bit of a quick intro to yourself and your background.
Hi, well, I'm Jo Tuffle and I am the SBR tutor at FME Learn Online. I started out my career as an auditor and then moved into industry doing financial reporting and management reporting. I then went into mergers and acquisitions. And then finally, I moved into teaching and I've now been teaching for over 20 years. My love is SBR and I love to tell you all about these changes.
Well, then you're the perfect guest because we're going to get stuck right into these updates to the SBR syllabus. So, as I've mentioned already, the syllabus is changing and that's going to be from September 25. I've touched upon a little bit of those changes, but maybe, Jo, you can start the conversation by expanding on that. What is the major change?
Well, it's all about improving the quality of financial reporting, and that means improving consistency and comparability across financial reporting. So what they're doing is they're now defining categories and subtotals for the profit and loss. And obviously this will improve comparability and consistency. They're requiring the disclosure of what we call management defined performance measures. And then they're also introducing enhanced requirements for the grouping of information in the primary financial statements and the notes.
So can you tell me a little bit more about the categories and the subtotals in the profit and loss or loss? Sorry.
Yeah, so well, it's the same as the cash flow statement now, in a way. They're introducing these categories of operating, investing, and financing. So the profit and loss is going to have some clear categories where you're to put your income and expenses so that show what is your operating activity, what is it you do. So things like going in the operating section would be revenue, cost of sales, of course, things like your depreciation, any gains and losses on property, plant and equipment, and employee benefit costs. They then have defined investing, and this is where your interest income is going to go, your associate profit share, and any investment property gains and losses. Financing, you've guessed it, is going to be your financing costs on your borrowings, your leasing. And if you remember this, FR sitters moving on to SBR, is unwinding the discounts on those provisions, for example. There are some mandatory subtotals as well. Operating profit is a major part of many ratios throughout the financial statements. We use it in return on capital employed, for instance. And so it's now been defined and we have to mandatorily include that in the profit or loss. This is wonderful. It's also now the start of the indirect cash flow statement. We used to have to add back things to get to operating profit, and now we just start with operating. It's certainly going to promote consistency, Isabel.
That sounds very positive. And I think that's useful overview, but I think what students will be asking is, how will this be tested in the SBR exam? So, for example, in question 1.
Yeah, well, question 1 was changed back in September 23 to be a pre-populated spreadsheet question. And there's at least 14 marks going on calculations. So obviously the IFRS pro formas are now going to be used as templates in question 1 if you get a cash flow statement or a profit or loss. Okay. Obviously the cash flow statement will now start with operating profit and not profit before tax. Any interest paid in the cash flow statement will now be part of financing. There used to be a choice. Also, in question 1, we could be asked whether they've misclassified items in the P&L. For instance, they've put it in financing and it should be in operating, or vice versa. And therefore, they're supposed to therefore adjust that and explain why. And in the past, we did used to have to state profit or loss. It goes to the profit or loss. Obviously now that is going to be, it goes to the profit or loss in the investing section. So that will be pretty key for students to understand. They need to be much more clearer on where it goes in the profit and loss. So really that's your question 1, because it's basically doing adjustments to a spreadsheet, but also writing about them and explaining them. So students hopefully will find that quite straightforward to gain those marks.
Okay. So the new disclosures around management defined performance measures, they sound quite interesting. What's that? What are these?
So management defined performance measures are basically profit ratios made up by management. That's really it is in simple terms. Basically, they're a subtotal of income and expenses. So basically profit. And often they're used in public communications to communicate the management's view of the performance of the entity, the company, to its users. They're not going to be an existing or commonly used subtotal, i.e. in the profit or loss, but they are going to be ones that have to be made up. And we want consistency, don't we? This is the whole point of IFRS 18. So therefore, they're going to have to start publishing, first of all, defining it, i.e. what it is, how it's calculated, and also reconcile it to an IFRS measure. So therefore, they can't start doing this, I'm just going to use a profit figure that makes sense to me, makes my company look the best, without defining it, without categorizing it, and without reconciling it. And so therefore, it improves understandability of what they're using to the users of the financial statements. It's a great innovation.
Brilliant. And again, I wanted to ask you how you think that will be tested.
Well, the thing I think it's going to be tested, because there's been a bit of a diet of this in the past exam questions, where they give you a disclosure note. So of course, these management defined performance measures, you have to get the wording, is always going to be something that will be disclosed in the financial statements now. So they'll test it like that. They'll give you a disclosure and you're going to critique it. You're going to critique it based on how have they defined it in accordance with the disclosure requirements of IFRS 18, and also say whether they're actually useful to stakeholders and why. That's how I think they're going to examine it.
Okay, thanks, Jo. And is there anything else that could come up in the SBR exam?
Well, because IFRS 18 has basically defined what over-aggregation or offsetting should be now in a bit more detail, I'm pretty certain there'll be a discussion about that. And then also, they have also redefined current or non-current presentations. So again, there could be a discussion about that. So it's all about being able to explain if it's right or wrong, and how it's more useful to investors. That will be the focus.
Okay, that's good insight there. And before we wrap up, any final points that you want to share with SBR sitters?
Well, what I want to say is that although it feels like a major change to the SBR, this new syllabus area, you will be pretty much certain it's going to be tested. It will be a guarantee in the next few sittings. Like when sustainability standards were brought in last year in September 24, that has been a major part of the SBR exam. So now we are definitely going to be looking at some questions which will test the new IFRS 18. So my advice is let's embrace it. It's nice to have some certainty for once in the SBR exam. What do you think, Isabel?
So I think that's a great way to end, basically. I think you're so right. It's nice. It sounds like everything you've given us information on today, it makes it sound like things are going to be, a lot clearer, and it sounds like a positive change. And like you say, embrace it, and all will be well. So thank you so much, Jo. I think that's been a useful overview of the changes coming to the SBR syllabus. Really appreciate you taking the time to explain this to ACCA students. And I think you'll join me in wishing all of the students who are sitting SBR in future sessions the best of luck. So take care and goodbye.
Thanks for listening.